Welcome to The Explainer. I'm so glad you're joining us today because, wow, we are tracking a highly dynamic and frankly urgent situation right now, the June 2026 Calgary flood watch. With an absolute rush of data coming in from city officials regarding the Bow and Elbow River catchments, my goal today is to help you visualize exactly what's happening on the ground and, well, in the water. We're going to map out the current threat, dig into the historical context, and see exactly how this city's infrastructure is holding up.
Right off the bat, we got to ask the big question that is basically on every local's mind right now. With torrential, heavy rains pounding the area and river levels rapidly rising, is the city facing an imminent, widespread disaster? I mean, when you hear that up to 150 millimeters of rain might fall, it's totally natural to picture the absolute worst-case scenario. But to truly understand the real threat level, we need to take a much closer look at the meteorological data.
All right, Section 1, the rising rivers. Let's look at Calgary's current meteorological threat.
So check this out. Between 40 and 80 millimeters, that is the sheer amount of rain that has already heavily saturated the city and the surrounding river catchments since Saturday. The ground is literally acting like a wet sponge right now, the river flows are swelling, and that base level of precipitation has really set the stage for this current flood watch we're tracking.
And, well, the rain hasn't exactly called it quits. We really have to stack the severity here, because officials are bracing for upwards of an additional 70 millimeters of rain right through midday Tuesday. And Tuesday midday, that's the critical window. That is exactly when city officials forecast the rivers to crest. So we've got a massive amount of water already on the ground, with another significant deluge actively compounding the situation before we even hit the peak.
But hey, there actually is a pretty fascinating meteorological silver lining that we need to highlight. Cooler temperatures in the region are totally doing us a solid. Because it's colder up at higher elevations, the precipitation up there is falling as snow rather than rain. This is absolutely crucial because it significantly slows down the alpine snowmelt, dialing back the overall severity of the streamflow runoff that would otherwise be rocketing down into the city's river system. It's a perfect example of how complex these weather systems really are.
Moving on to Section 2, advisories and closures, focusing on the immediate danger zones. Now, let's talk about the danger out on the water. Usually, a standard boating advisory kicks in when river flows hit about 280 cubic meters per second. But right now, the terrifying reality is that current flows are speeding past 360 cubic meters per second. The rivers are moving incredibly fast, they're carrying massive force, and they're chewing up the riverbanks.
Just listen to this stark warning from Alex Kwan with the Calgary Fire Department. He put it perfectly. It's just not safe. You're not going to enjoy yourself. The water is very cold and it's murky. This isn't just a friendly suggestion, folks. It's an urgent directive. I mean, to emphasize this extreme danger, fire crews have already had to respond to a water rescue call for a group of kayakers over at Harvey Passage. Thankfully, they didn't end up requiring a rescue, but it just goes to show you that these conditions are absolutely not suitable for recreation. No way.
So, to keep everyone safe from these swift, freezing waters, the city has locked down several localized pathways and underpasses. Along the Elbow River, we're talking closures at 25 Avenue, the CNR Bridge, and Macleod Trail. Over on the Bow River side, the Reconciliation, Center Street, and Louise bridges are blocked off, along with nearby spots like Beaumont Park, the zoo's North Bank, Bainbridge Underpass, and St. Patrick's Island. But, and this is a really important but, while these local closures are in effect, officials stress that widespread evacuations or major road closures are not anticipated right now.
Still, despite those reassurances, whenever we see river levels jump like this, it naturally triggers some deep anxiety for basically every Calgarian, right? It totally begs the question, are we staring down a repeat of the devastating 2013 floods? That event left a permanent mark on the city, so it's absolutely vital we look at the data to see if history is actually repeating itself.
Which brings us to Section 3, the ghost of 2013, our comparative threat analysis. Okay, you are going to love this because it is incredibly relieving. When we look at our current anticipated peak river flows for 2026, they are sitting at less than a quarter, under 25% of the massive peak amounts we saw back during the 2013 floods. Because these forecasted levels are drastically lower, officials are confidently saying that widespread overland flooding is simply not expected this time around.
But let's be real clear here. These lower, manageable flow rates aren't just dumb luck. Actually, scratch that. It's the exact opposite of luck. It's proactive planning. Both the Glenmore Reservoir and TransAlta's Ghost Reservoir were intentionally lowered way ahead of time.
By drawing down those water levels early, they basically created a giant, empty bathtub to safely catch and hold the incoming floodwaters.
Let's dive into Section 4, a billion-dollar defense, and look at exactly how Calgary prepared.
Because over the last 13 years, there's been an absolute masterclass in fortifying the city. We are talking about a massive $1.3 billion joint investment from federal, provincial, and municipal governments. $1.3 billion. That is a staggering pile of capital poured directly into flood resilience measures and critical infrastructure since the disaster of 2013.
And check out the return on that investment. It is a real game changer. This incredible funding has successfully eliminated more than 70% of the damage potential that existed back in 2013. The vast majority of the city's vulnerability has just been systematically engineered out of existence, leaving us with a much, much smaller window of remaining risk.
So what does $1.3 billion actually buy a city? Well, it bought a vast, multi-layered defense system. We're talking entirely new reservoir storage and operations. It funded heavy-duty, community-scale flood barriers to protect vulnerable neighborhoods, massive stormwater outfall gates, and crucial riverbank erosion protection, plus high-capacity pumping stations and heavily upgraded forecasting and monitoring tech. It's the whole shebang, and all these physical and operational tools are actively working together right now to keep the water at bay.
Which leaves us with one final, pretty profound thought to wrap up today's explainer. We've just watched a truly frightening weather event get effectively stopped in its tracks by proactive planning and heavy infrastructure. With $1.3 billion invested and over 70% of the previous damage potential just completely wiped out, is Calgary now the ultimate standard for urban flood resilience? It's a civic engineering triumph definitely worth thinking about as we watch these safe, manageable river crests roll through this Tuesday. Thanks so much for joining me to break this all down. And hey, stay safe out there.